Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Caroline Colas, and I am your host tonight on Broadway's Best for Parkinsons. This is a show that is supported by a community grant from the Parkinsons Foundation, and we have a great show for you tonight. Our topic is the other side of caregiving, stories of kids whose parents have Parkinson's. We'll be hearing from kids whose parents have PD, those living with PD, as well as neurologist Dr. Ritesh Ramdani and Director of Social Work Services at the Barry Florence Friedberg JCC, Gloria LeBeau. Suzanne Vega is back in the house, and be sure to stay on until the very end of the show because Alexis Fishman will be singing for us. And of course, Pamela Quinn and her son Colin are also here tonight. I'm the Director of Health and Wellness at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan and the Program Coordinator for the Northwell Health Edmond J Safra Parkinson's Wellness Program here at the JCC. I'm so excited. We have such a great show. Wait till you meet everybody. The show is beneficial for everyone, but especially for those who want to know more about PD and those living with PD and anybody that cares about them. I want to start by thanking all our guests for sharing their talents with us and helping us get the word out about our virtual JCC Parkinson's program. Our program's open to anyone. So for more information about how you can participate, visit us at www.mmjccm.org/Parkinson's. This is an interactive show, everybody. So we want to hear from you. Please put your questions, your comments, anything you want to say, or feedback in the chat, and we will definitely respond and get back to you. And now it's time to introduce our first two guests, neurologist Dr. Ritesh Ramdani and Director of Social Work, Gloria LeBeau. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Ramdani, or Ritesh, as he prefers to be called. He's the Director of Deep Brain Stimulation at Northwell Health and the Associate Professor of the Donald and Barbara Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra Northwell Health. His research interests include using motor sensor technology to better characterize Parkinson's motor symptoms. And we had a wonderful conversation on our Getting Personal Parkinson's series, Ritesh and I, about deep brain stimulation. So we'll put that link in the chat and you can look into that. It's really interesting. Ritesh has presented several times for us here at the Marlene Meyerson JCC, and he's well known and loved by our JCC PD community. Welcome, Ritesh. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Caroline. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, and now I'd also like to welcome a colleague and somebody I consider a friend, Gloria LeBeau. She is the Director of Social Work Services at the Barry and Florence Friedberg JCC, and she's a trained psychotherapist providing consultation and individual and group counseling to adults and their families in her private practice. As an adjunct professor at the Adelphi University School of Social Work, Gloria has special expertise facilitating support groups and gives presentations on areas related to aging, bereavement, caregiving, and Parkinson's disease. She has also been on our Getting Personal with Parkinson's series, and we had a wonderful conversation, and I invite you to tune into that as well. I've had the opportunity to work closely with both Ritesh and Gloria and I this past year have co-sponsored several joint programs, including our upcoming Parkinson's Awareness Month offerings to expand our reach to the PD community, to both the JCC Manhattan community and the Friedberg JCC Parkinson's community. Welcome, Gloria. Thanks for being here tonight. Yeah.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad that we're getting a chance to talk and other people are getting a chance to hear us. We had a wonderful conversation, several conversations about tonight's show, and it's just great that you're both here and that we get to continue this conversation. We know that Parkinson's manifests differently in each person, and it's also true, isn't it, that each person and their family and each sibling actually in their family manages the news of this disease and the interaction with their parent that has this disease differently. Gloria and Ritesh, do you find that to be true, that no two families handle PD the same way? Gloria?
Absolutely. I think families are unique in every way, in the way they handle challenges, in the way they handle struggles, in the way they communicate together. Every family has their own version of communication, and that is specifically a critical when it comes to Parkinson's, because communication and open communication in a family is so vital. So yes, families are very unique and they handle Parkinson's in their own very unique way.
And Ritesh, it's really true, isn't it, that Parkinson's is different for each individual? Can you just talk about first that and then how you've noticed it impact the family in a different
Yeah,
way?
no, I agree wholeheartedly with what Gloria said. This is a very individualized condition. There's nothing homogeneous about Parkinson's disease, very heterogeneous. And we always say that no two Parkinson's patients are the same, and that remains the case to this day. And so sort of knowing that this disease affects each individual uniquely, it's important to sort of understand that individual's living environment and their family relationship, because the way they and their families will experience it will also be very unique, and will have direct bearing on their quality of life and how they manage their Parkinson's moving forward.
Yeah, we're going to hear from two families, and of course, it's just a small sample of the impact of Parkinson's. And we'll just tell with those two stories a little bit about the impact it's had. But we really do want to stress that each family is different, and there's no right way to interact or respond to Parkinson's. It's a very unique situation for everyone. Gloria, what questions and concerns do you hear most from those living with PD regarding their kids? For example, with early onset parents who have young children, do you have advice about when to tell them, the kids?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in all situations, first, the person with PD has to work some of this through before they even decide to have a conversation. They need to feel secure and confident enough to have open dialogue with any age child that they're going to be speaking to. Then once they feel that they can address this, they need to begin to open the conversation. They need to use simple language. They need to talk a little bit about how it's going to impact their everyday activities. So for example, if they run together or walk together, the child needs to be told, I'm going to have to walk a little slower now. If the person ties that child's shoes, that person needs to be able to say to them, if I bend over, it's a little more difficult for me now. You may have to raise your leg to help me with this. Those are different areas in terms of how to address this in a simple way, in a very direct way, and to recognize that that communication and dialogue has to continue over time.
And Ritesh, it's really interesting, isn't it? Sometimes people, when they first get their diagnosis, they don't even tell their spouse, right? As Gloria was saying, it's a very personal thing to be able to sort of digest the information first and then dispense it. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I think that this is not an easy diagnosis to receive, and everyone processes it differently. But what I've seen to be quite effective in those individuals who have moved past that diagnosis to a state where they're living their life the way they want to live it, despite this diagnosis, is that they've reached a state of understanding. They understand that this is a chronic condition. They understand that this is a treatable condition. And they understand that there are things, behavioral things that can be done that we believe potentially even slows the progression down. And I think that that state is reached more easily when they're able to share and have an open communication with their spouse or partner and their family members, when they're able to engage them and they are reciprocally are able to support them, advocate for them, because there's a shared understanding of what they're going through. So it requires a team effort at the family level. But I think obviously, I always tell patients, process this information, talk to your doctors again and again until you feel you've comforted that you understand what this is. And then your ability to communicate it and to receive information back and to address those questions becomes that much easier moving forward.
Excellent. And Gloria, any comments on that? I know you've had people that sometimes have been very private about it and some that have shared about it openly right away.
I mean, every family is different. And so their ability to handle this kind of material is different. I do agree. I think families that have support systems do better. And I think expanding, so this is where the idea of not harboring secrets is so important, because if you don't harbor a secret and you engage your community, your doctor, potentially a therapist, people around you who can support you, who can continue to keep the children and family engaged and not isolated. I think diseases, all chronic diseases, can either be isolating or they can bring people together. And I think the idea of not being alone and isolated is so significant, not just for the person with PD, but the family members.
Excellent. And Ritesh, before I forget, are there any set medical guidelines about when to tell young children about a PD diagnosis?
No, there's no specific guidelines that I'm aware of about how to or when is a good time to tell children about your disease. And Gloria addressed this very eloquently a few minutes ago. It's really when you feel you're ready and prepared to engage your family and your children, and how you speak to them. If you have young children, you want to use simple language. You want to be able to describe the symptoms in a way that is understandable and relatable, and sort of offers them an opportunity to ask questions about it, and for you to express your own emotional state and your feelings. I think that it's healthy to get your feelings out and for your family members to understand it as well. I think it does each party, it's healthy, and it leads for better outcomes, and it leads for a quality of life that can be lived with family in such a joyous way. And so that makes Parkinson's more of less of a barrier, of a challenge that only one person has to deal with. And I think when you have that support built around you, it becomes a very different entity.
You mentioned it. It's like you need a team. Sure, go ahead.
Just one last thing is normalizing Parkinson's. So that is just one additional family event. So kids can still live normal kids' lives, go play soccer, go to college, run around is really, really important. And so that's that idea of normalizing it as not always being the front and center of their life together.
Yeah, and you talked about that getting older, getting a chronic disease, it's in the life cycle. It's not that unusual, right? It's part of life, and teaching kids that this is part of life. Things happen, right? And the importance of that. Gloria, what questions and concerns do you hear most from kids whose parents are living with PD? Are there any commonalities?
Well, if they're young, and not even if they're young, if they're teens, I mean, the three main questions are, is it fatal? Did I cause it? And is it contagious? Three very basic questions that actually is said in different ways at different periods. So when they're very little, they say it one way. When they're teenagers, they say it another way. And I have to tell you, even adult children will ask, in a sense, it's in their head is the same question, really. Those are the three main questions that they're all tackling with.
Ritesh, what about you? When do children most often become involved in their parents' care? Do you notice that there are any commonalities there?
Yeah, in my experience, I find that children become certainly involved when their parent is requiring more help, needing a little bit more assistance to do things maybe around the house or outside of the house. That's where I tend to see kids get a little bit more engaged and involved. at that level. But again, there is no the hard and fast rule as to when this happens. I've seen children be there at the time of the diagnosis and become advocates for their parents and help them to understand this and help them to understand and process the information about medications, about what the progression could look like, about the things you can do. And I've seen others sort of wait until they feel they need more support and they need that direct assistance before they start to engage their children.
We also see grandkids engaged and involved as well, right? It's kind of this is an illness that spans the lifespan, right? So, Gloria, can you talk about what isn't being said? For example, what if children's parents didn't have such a good relationship before the PD diagnosis, and then suddenly they're now in a caregiving situation? That probably happens more often than we think.
It does, and it's tough. And I like to look at situations as opportunities. So even if you're not getting along and never got along, so you have two choices there. You can step up and caregive, and if necessary, protect yourself if that relationship had been toxic, or it's a wonderful opportunity to reconcile and get to know this person that you probably may not have known so well because of all the stuff that was going on, all the conflict and toxicity. So we can go either way there, but it's when there is that situation, it is difficult. And you have to remember that the level of responsibility that that adult child might have to start taking on is difficult. And it can be difficult, it could be burdening, it can be frightening. So I think that that's some of the stuff that needs to be spoken about that isn't really talked about.
Yeah, and what about if I'm just not sure why I'm getting some feedback, but I am sorry about that. I'll see if I can figure that out. What about if the child themselves has an illness or some challenges? That even complicates the situation too. Chesh, going deeper into what often isn't said, you mentioned that you look for signs of burnout, both in care partners and their kids. Can you talk about that? Why do you look for that, and do you find that they don't bring it up?
Yeah, no, oftentimes, caregiver burnout goes unrecognized. And, it is a real phenomenon that I've seen and I ask about. And when I do see it and I see signs of it in the office, it's important to query and to ask that child or caregiver how they're feeling, what are the challenges that they're facing, and because in order for them to take good care of their parent, they themselves have to be able to take care of themselves. And so the sustainability of the best quality of life we could give someone at certain points may rely on children taking on more and more caregiver responsibility. And whether it's arranging appointments, whether it's picking up medications at the pharmacy, whether it's coordinating other healthcare providers and care teams into, and then also managing their own personal lives. And so, and many times I found that children and caregivers do not bring it forward because they feel like they think it may be something somewhat shameful to bring forward, that they're not being able to meet the expectations of their loved one they're taking care of. But actually, it's something most remarkably admirable, and as a physician, it's something that I am very sensitive to, and I think it's important to talk to and see if we could assist that person with allocating further resources to help them at least
Sure.
talk about it.
Yeah. And can you address, Gloria, I want you to talk about that a little bit before we end, but can you address the contagious question? Because I think that that's an important one. In other words, what do we know in regards to, is Parkinson's hereditary? Is it contagious? Let's just handle that one.
No, I mean,
Ritesh.
I think, certainly, oh, Ritesh will do that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
just from
ahead.
a medical point of view, and then Gloria will go to you.
Is it contagious? No. We have no evidence that it's infectious in any way. Is it genetic? Well, we know that that about 5 to 10% of all Parkinson's patients harbor a specific genetic mutation, but in terms of sort of passing down that mutation, the penetrance is far less than 100%. So this is why we don't typically screen patients for genetic risk factors, because even if we do identify a gene, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're destined to go on to get the disease.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
We have a question in the chat, Gloria, that I would love for you to answer, and I think it'll, you can add on what you wanted to say as well. What would you suggest is a good approach to helping a care partner to see that they are burned out and need help support? My father is definitely burned out, but refuses to accept help to take care of my mom. It's a constant battle, and it's hard to know how best to support him.
So, I think, by the way, it's a very good question. It's a very common question where the spouse feels so responsible. And remember, if they've been together, I suspect they've been together a very long time. And part of that togetherness is a belief that you are together in sickness and in health. And that's a very strong belief system. So how would an adult child support that parent, for example? By giving that parent opportunities on occasion to spend a little time by themselves, taking the other person out so that the parent feels like, oh, my daughter, for example, wants to spend time with my wife. That's fabulous. Take her out. And so without it being very direct, so you're not taking care of the parent directly, you're taking care of them indirectly, because it's very important for them to feel like they're taking care of their loved one. You can't really take that away from them. You sort of have to be a little sneaky in this one and offer assistance without offering it directly necessarily.
Excellent advice. Thank you so much, Gloria and Ritesh. Please stay with us tonight. I might have you come back on the show if other things come up, but thank you both for providing insight on how PD diagnosis can impact a family dynamic, the contagious question, whether there's a medical timing at all to tell our kids, which we found out there is not, and it's also not contagious. And you've both contributed a list of resources to support families grappling with a PD diagnosis, which we'll send out with the recording to everyone that signed up for the event tonight. Thank you again for being with us.
Thank you.
I am super excited to welcome back to Broadway's Best for PD, Suzanne Vega. Suzanne is a world-famous singer-songwriter and actress. She has released her self-titled debut album in 1985, which has sold over 1 million copies. And her 1987 follow-up, Solitude, Standing, was both a critical and commercial success, elevating her status as a singer-songwriter. Her latest album, An Evening of New York Songs and Stories, was recorded live in March 2019 at Cafe Carlyle and released in 2020. She appeared in the off-Broadway production of Bob, Carol, Ted, and Alice, and is now back on the road performing again. Oh, Suzanne, you got to tell us about that. That must be amazing after a long time. She is also the daughter of Pat Vega, who's beloved in our community. Pat has been living with Parkinson's for 19 years, and she has been participating in our Parkinson's wellness programs since its inception. Suzanne, welcome back.
Hi.
Yeah. How is it? I'm good. How is it being back on the road and singing in front of live audiences again?
It's been great. It's been really great. We're still concerned, obviously, about COVID and taking care of ourselves, but it's been wonderful getting back to, a bit of the old lifestyle. It's great.
Yeah. And do you remember, we're talking tonight, about what's it like to have a parent with PD. So do you remember how your mom told you about her diagnosis and how you reacted to the news 19 years ago?
Yeah, I remember vividly because the first feeling I felt was a feeling of relief because she had been having symptoms for many months and she had done a lot of research and she suspected that she had Parkinson's and she kept getting feedback from various doctors that she did not have it. And they kept suggesting other things, that it was grief or it was stress or it was this and that. And they sent her finally to a specialist to prove to her that it was not Parkinson's, and he instead gave her the diagnosis that it was in fact Parkinson's. So I felt on the one hand relief because we finally knew what it was, and therefore I was hoping we could manage it, which my mother has done really well. The
Brilliantly.
second thing I felt was proud that my mother had intuited what was going on and that she had it confirmed by Dr. DeRocco. And that, so I was proud that she had taken the matters into her own hands, which is very like her. She's very independent and very inclined to do a lot of research and come to her own conclusions. And then, of course, I felt a little sad and just a little concerned because I didn't know anything about it and I didn't know what the future was going to bring all of us and her.
Right. And how has your mom's diagnosis of PD impacted the decisions you make yourself around your own health?
Well, I have always been a health conscious person, and so I've always tried to take care of myself. And I do have my own issues aside from any sort of Parkinson's thing, but I do worry. I'm now 62, which is the age that my mother was when she was diagnosed. So I feel a sense of worry and sometimes and I think if I get a cramp at night, I talk to my mother about it, and she's like, "No, cramps are not Parkinson's." I really don't know what it feels like, So I do worry, but I wouldn't really know what to do to prevent it anyway. You mentioned before washing vegetables, so I'm like, well, maybe I should wash the vegetables more often. And I did get rid of all of my aluminum for various reasons, and
Let's bring Ritesh back on and
okay.
have him comment on just this idea of what can we do to prevent Parkinson's?
Well, I think that lifestyle has a lot to do with potentially slowing this down in the long term, and those things include the importance of exercise, vigorous cardiovascular-based exercising that's been shown in a number of studies that to lessen the amount of disability someone acquires from Parkinson's as time goes on. Um, the type of food you put in your body. We know that the gut microbiome has become a very important area in medicine that's associated with possibly Parkinson's as well as other chronic conditions. And so, taking care of your gut, making sure that you sleep, you get your 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep, also is can help with promoting brain health as well as allowing your body to fully gather that rest and restore its strength that it needs for the coming day. So these are just some of the things that we've known for generations on generations, but now science is proving that it's these lifestyle things that are so critical for potentially maybe saving. I don't know if I could say preventing it from happening, but if you have it, certainly can lessen the level of disability you acquire the longer you have it.
Thank you so much, Ritesh. Suzanne, does that help a little?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of what I hope to do anyway. So I try to take care of myself as a former dancer, but so yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Speaking of former dancers, I had a wonderful conversation with your mom, and I'd like everybody to get a chance to experience her in her own words. She has always had a love of the arts, and her passions include ballroom dance, writing, editing, and her interest in data and systems analysis at Hunter College led to a 21-year career with the New York Transit Authority. So it doesn't surprise me when you said like she researched and she found out all those things about things, right? And from yoga to Nia, Pat tried every single program in our program and loved them. And she even came up with the name for our walking group, which was Bold Moves. And I guess that must have been inspired by her son, Tim, right?
Yes.
And yes. So Pat, we filmed a little conversation with her, and I'd love to show that for you all now.
Do you have any advice to give families living with PD about how to share this or communicate with your kids?
Yeah. I think it would really help to have a support group or some kind of a cognitive therapy about it, because unless you have a big support system, it's hard to keep your perspective on things. They're always accusing me of being dramatic. And I'm like, a person with Parkinson's needs to be dramatic. We need to yell and move our arms,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes with the territory, right?
So how many kids do you have? Is it Suzanne and Allison?
I have a son, Matthew,
Mm-hmm.
and Timothy, of course. Timothy, he passed away in 2002.
I'm so sorry.
And he's the one that the Bold Moves is memorializing him, because he was a graffiti artist. And his tag was bold.
Ah.
Yeah, so bold, and he had bold on his, he made bold t-shirts, and let's see if I can find one.
Oh, there we go. There's the dragon. Yeah, there it is. Wow. That he liked a lot of color. You've been diagnosed for how long now, Pat?
I would say 19 years.
Wow.
I got my first symptom December of 2002.
And were you concerned about telling your kids? Did you tell them right away?
Yeah, I did, because I went through a year and a half of being sent for all kinds of tests, mm-hmm. and not knowing what it was.
Gotcha.
So finding out what it was, Parkinson's seemed less of a scary thing than some of the things they were testing it for. I was still taking ballroom dancing.
Yeah, I remember. Thank you that was kind of a blessing. You were quite a dancer.
Yeah, right. When Scott came to the JCC, and
mm-hmm.
we were trying to get dancing on the curriculum.
Yeah.
Ballroom dancing, guys.
Yeah, I remember.
That would have been fun.
We did a couple events with ballroom dancing. It was fun.
Yeah, definitely.
So you told them right away, and everybody was like relieved to know about it. And then as you have aged and as the PD has progressed, has it affected your relationship? You mentioned it with Allison, with all of your kids differently?
Yeah, definitely. I used to go out to the Hamptons and visit Matthew, mm-hmm. every month, like once a month I'd go out there. And it's like, okay, my weekend out in the country. And so now I say, okay, I can't come out there anymore because, the pandemic, and my Parkinson's got way worse this past year. The nurse practitioner told me that, I said, is it like a new phase? Is it like, am I going into a, because I remember how some of the people, you can't hear them speak. Mm-hmm. Their voice is so low. And you can't tell if they're listening to you or not, because, their face is frozen, right? And when I'm off now, my face is starting to get frozen. And, I lost a bunch of teeth. So my, it's one of the things that go with aging.
Having a support team around you has really been helpful. So so you're managing the burden. Do you ever worry that you're a burden on them? Or they would tell you.
Oh yeah.
You don't have to worry about that because they tell you.
You know, it's not just Parkinson's, it's any chronic condition that makes you, you know, and sometimes I'm a little too eager to ask for help. It's supposed to be good to ask for help, but I can overdo it. You know, I have one friend that just put everything on the shelf and flew home to Cleveland to take care of her mother. And she gave her baths and she cleaned her bottom and took care of her for 3 years straight until she passed away. And then she did it again for her father. I'm like, none of my kids would do that for me. They would not. They're very squeamish. And and I wouldn't do it for my mother either, because my mother and I were, it was difficult. But
yeah, that's an interesting, it's an interesting thing that you bring up, which is just because your friend was able to do that for her mother doesn't mean that everyone can do that.
No, they can't.
And it doesn't sound like you have the expectation that your kids should do that for you.
I came to New York. I'm 3,000 miles away from my mother. And when my mother would call me up at 2 a.m, I just would hang up on her. I wouldn't talk to her. So I went like almost 9 years without communicating much.
So in relationship to that, it sounds like having a good relationship with your kids was really important to you.
Right. So I said to myself, it will never be that my kids will not speak to me. I will climb over hot rocks, molten lava to keep the relationship going. And then I was like, okay, I have to develop a life of my own here. And then, I remembered that I developed the ability to amuse myself as a kid.
Oh, Pat.
Reading and listening to the radio, and
This sounds like what your advice is to people. Would you say that to be true? That it's important to develop your own life?
Yeah, have a relationship with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep making big goals, even though I expect to die any minute. I'm gonna
What's your latest big goal, Pat?
I'm going to write a book. And I'm going to make a memorial bench for Tim in Riverside Park. And I'm going to do a fundraiser to have and I'm going to put the word bold on it. Awesome. And I'm going to have my own memorial bench next to it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for spending your time with me.
Well, thank you for listening.
Oh, Suzanne, what didn't get said in that video was I asked her this question. I said, "You're proud of your kids, aren't you?" Oh. And she said, "Yes." And she went one by one and talked about each one of you. And what I was struck by was how honest and authentic your family is. So when I was sort of laughing about, about being the burden and that you guys would tell her, she seems like she's very matter of fact, and that you guys have that authentic relationship. Would you describe it that way?
Yeah, I would describe it that way. We try to be open and honest with each other emotionally. We were raised that way. And so that's that's how we are. And we're very connected.
Yeah, it's not always right. It's not always easy. Gloria, if you could pop on for a second, it's not always easy to hear that honest truth, right? Suzanne, has there been times when that hasn't been easy to hear from
which way do you mean that? Where if she...
Well, either that she shared with me that sometimes with her symptoms, she just feels like she's having so much anxiety and she worries that she's like dying that day. And she doesn't share that with you because she doesn't want to be you to be
She
concerned about
does,
that.
actually. She said
Okay.
she
Well,
didn't,
there
but
you
she
go.
actually does. She calls us up and says, various things that
Okay.
make us say, why are you saying this? I mean, we
Well, there we
figured
go.
it out. Yeah.
So that kind of thing is kind of could cause a little bit of panic. So how have you managed that? You know
We
what I
just try
mean?
and talk it out. And if something becomes too stressful, I guess last Thanksgiving, I had just moved and I was hosting one set of parents of, my daughter's parents, and I didn't I felt that to have my mother at the same time would have been stressful. So we had to really talk about that because I think my mother's feelings were hurt, but I said it's too much stress for me. We have to do it on a different day. It's not a personal thing. I'm not trying to hurt you, but it's when I'm with my mother, it's she requires my full attention, and the aid that comes with her. It's a whole thing. So
Yeah.
we just try and talk it through. I mean, that's
Yeah.
all you can
I,
really
I,
do.
I think you're talking about setting boundaries. Gloria, does it sound like that to you?
Yeah, it's setting boundaries and taking care of yourself. I think what happens in these caregiving relationships, and earlier Ritesh had referred to that, is that if there is no self-care, you cannot be there for the other person. So what Suzanne is describing is recognizing so beautifully what her limits are, that she wants to be there for her mom in the best way, but she knew that if she went beyond that amount, that she would be no good to herself and that of course to anyone else. So Suzanne was real clear. By the way, your mom is a pip. She's something, I'll tell you. So, I have to say, so I think that belief that you knew in other words, you have that ability together to be authentic and genuine and honest, but you have also created this ability to protect yourself and know your limits. And there's nothing better than that. That is what allows this to work, to really work.
Yeah, and then when I spend time with her, I can really devote hours to her alone. I'm not running back and forth and dividing my time, and then it really works. So, but it all takes talking. You have to talk it through.
Yeah. Suzanne, thank you so much for joining us. Gloria, hang on for 1 minute because we had a question in the chat that I think was really interesting, which is that someone said, my son recently thought that I was an alcoholic because my symptoms made it seem to him like I was drunk. And I had to explain to him that, no, it's that I have Parkinson's. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Ritesh was talking about how we need to tell our kids about the symptoms so they know what to expect, and understanding the illness is really important. Any thoughts on that comment or question?
Well, I think that there's a lot of things to unpack there, but I guess the piece that's so important is that the person with Parkinson's has to be believed. So they need validation that what they're experiencing is real and genuine. And the child has to begin to recognize that that person knows their body. If they have questions, that's a perfect time for the two of them to talk to the neurologist together. It's a really good opportunity to get the facts straight. But the idea that the person who's experiencing the disease needs validation, they are struggling themselves. And so that is important. They all need to communicate. This is where Suzanne was clear. There has to be open communication.
Thank you. That's so helpful. And now I'm going to bring on, thank you, Gloria, and I might bring you back. So I appreciate you staying in the studio audience there. I'm going to introduce you to Colin Quinn O'Connor and Pamela Quinn. And what a treat you're in for tonight. This is another family that's been impacted by PD, of course. And Pam is a professional dancer, choreographer who's had symptoms 2 years before receiving a PD diagnosis over 25 years ago. Pam was a professional dancer and an artist. She's the creator of PD Movement Lab and offers a class here at the JCC and also in Brooklyn. She was diagnosed with PD when Colin, her son, was just a toddler. Now they actually work together. Colin works with his mom as the director of operations for her PD movement lab. And we're going to see a collaboration that they had, and then we'll bring them onto the show. He translates Pam's PD movement programs into accessible digital formats. We have a clip that's of a choreographic work that they created during the pandemic, appropriately titled 2020 Boxed In. Anybody else feel boxed in by Zoom in 2020? Well, here is a visual representation, a dance piece, if you will, with students from Pam's JCC class and Brooklyn class. It's a PD Movement Lab collaboration. Yay! I love that. Oh, wow. That was just amazing. Colin, come on. Let's just talk about it. Every time I see that, I just love this, and these things. It's just so creative. That must have been fun to create together.
Well, yeah, the choreography was all my mother's, as it normally is, but just by the nature of the pandemic, I was tasked with figuring out how to help her bring her class online, and so I was naturally there recording it, and then it just kind of spiraled into us putting together this work.
It's wonderful. Hey, I understand it's a special day. I understand that it is your birthday today.
It is.
Well, happy birthday. You care to tell us how old or no?
I am 29 years old.
Wow. Well, happy birthday. Thanks so much for being here on your special day. We appreciate
Sure.
that.
Happy to be here.
How old were you when your mother was diagnosed?
I was 3 years old. So before I even had memories, I've never known my mom without PD.
Mm-hmm. And what was it like having a mom with PD? You said was kind of normal to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, as a child, I didn't really think about it, honestly. Looking back on it, I can kind of pick out little details, like when I would be in bed waiting for my parents to come tuck me in. I could always tell it was my mom coming because her steps would have a certain rhythm, a certain cadence, a certain sound. But she did a really phenomenal job of kind of shielding me as a young child, and just letting me lead a normal life.
Mm-hmm. Can you share with us a story or experience growing up that was impactful for you, having a parent living with PD?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I would point to any particular experience, but I just talked a little bit about my experience as a young child, but as a teenager, when I became a teenager, that was about around the time that my mom actually began teaching other people with Parkinson's, and so I grew up kind of seeing her have this second career, and by that point in my life, I was kind of old enough to have some perspective. I was able to understand that she was a dancer. She had that taken away from her by the disease, but then she had flipped the script on it and used her background in movement to help herself and to help others. And to see her do that and kind of recognize everything that went into that, I think was and still is really, really inspirational.
How was it for you though? Like, as a teenager, sometimes we don't want our parents to be different. Did that ever cross you, or did you ever have to interact with your peers in any way about your mom?
No,
or did they
not really.
pretty much understood that your mom and knew her and liked her for what she was, her, you know what I'm saying? Was there any awkwardness
Yeah, I mean, my
there?
friends didn't interact with her that much. I don't think so.
Great. And what would you want other children growing up with a parent with PD to know?
I think I would want them to be aware of and recognize the non-motor symptoms of PD. In working with her over the past few years, I have come to think about the technological challenges that she has using computers more as a function of her Parkinson's than as some type of personal shortcoming. I always believe that, but that's become much more clear to me in being in close dialogue with her. And that has, in a lot of ways, reframed a whole host of experiences growing up and different family dynamics that existed growing up. Whenever she would have a non sequitur at the dinner table, or she just couldn't get a very basic function on the computer, we were always accommodating and loving. But I think that, when someone just doesn't get something and you don't understand why, there was in some way this question hanging in the air, maybe surrounding intelligence, or it didn't make sense because she was obviously so articulate and talented in other areas. But so I think, and that to have that kind of question hanging in the air can affect family dynamics. And so I think for other families out there, you may have this situation where these non-motor symptoms, which are the least recognized, the least talked about aspects of the disease, may actually be having the largest impact on the interpersonal dynamics that are most important to us. So I would say really try to be aware of and pay attention and be patient with the non-motor symptoms of the disease.
Let's bring Ritesh back on for a second. Ritesh, can you talk to us about cognitive changes, and is there sometimes a delay? Each person is different, as we know. We had one question in the chat, which was, do you have any advice on how to openly communicate with a parent around cognitive changes? And there's changes that Colin is talking about, which is almost like a delay in processing, right? And how that, because it does impact the relationship. And I thank you for bringing it up. And of course, what has been, in the chat, they said, in what has been an honest relationship, ignoring it feels dishonest and not genuine, but raising it feels uncomfortable because my mother is largely unaware of the issues at this point. If there is a delay in processing, is the person necessarily going to be aware of that?
They may or may not. Usually one of the first cognitive things that many Parkinson's patients may be aware of is difficulty doing multiple things at the same time. So multitasking becomes a little bit more challenging. And that's one of the first cognitive things that's commonly seen in Parkinson's patients. But, to get to, Colin's point about the way he described his mom's, some of her challenges when processing information, it is reported quite often, in my experience, by other family members, because they're used to seeing and they're used to a certain way in which their parent or their family member communicates and makes decisions and processes and rationalizes events and conversations. And so what's very important to understand is that Parkinson's disease does not necessarily mean that you're going to go on to get Parkinson's dementia. The lifestyle things that we spoke about earlier do a lot of those heavy lifting to try to prevent that from even happening. But some of the multitasking issues, some of the what you call executive processing challenges can be noticeable by family members. Plus, we have to keep in mind that Parkinson's patients process stress and fatigue, and the medications that they're on also can play into some of these subtle executive processing challenges that people around them could also be picking up. So all of these things need to sort of be unpacked and looked at, at home, as well as when they're with their providers as well.
Thank you so much, Ritesh. That's really helpful. And Colin, I think that's what you wanted to bring to light so that people aren't thinking, gosh, what's going on with my mom, right? Or my dad, or my spouse. They used to be so with it, right? And this idea of not multitasking. I'd love to bring out Pam next. Ritesh, thank you. I probably will bring you back, but to respond to both some of Colin's thoughts. And there she is. Stage right.
Everything he said.
Well, a small point. I think maybe it got lost in the general point, but kids are often unofficial IT support for their parents, with or without Parkinson's, and so that was really the main experience that I couldn't wrap my head around. So that's all.
Do you think that it's made you more empathetic as a person, Colin, to have a parent that has Parkinson's? Are you aware of other challenges? Do you have more understanding, you think, than some other kids whose parents may not have Parkinson's?
It's difficult to say. I'd like to believe people can be good people without having parents with chronic diseases, but I do think that when you see someone older struggling to move in some way, I think there is certainly a level of awareness and compassion that you have, and an impulse to help. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Pam, how did you share this journey with your kids? Colin was 3, and you also went on to have another child. That's a big decision.
Yes, it was. To answer your question about how I shared my journey with them, is I answered whatever questions they had, but I didn't add anything to it that I didn't need to. So I fulfilled the question, but I didn't want to overburden them with extra information that might worry them. So I just tried to take my cues from them. And as far as having a second child, I really wanted a second child, but at the same time, I didn't want to jeopardize my own family the way it was with Colin. And I asked my doctor at the time about, the desire to have another child, and she gave me great advice. She said, live your life. We don't know what's down the pike, just live it the way you want, and we'll deal with things as they come. And that's what I did.
Beautiful. And what concerns did you have about your kids growing up with a parent with PD?
Well, Parkinson's is a disease you wear, so it's very obvious to other kids that something's wrong with your mom, unlike some other disease that they might not see. And I was so aware that I didn't want my kids to be made fun of, or for me to be made fun of, or for there to be some kind of repercussions in that way. So I didn't go on as many school trips or events like that where I might have been exposed. That's one way in which the disease affected my interaction with their growth.
Do you regret that decision, or do you think that was protective and a wise move at the time?
I think if I had to do it over, I would expose myself more, because I think it's important to educate children about the fact that people are different and people have different issues. And if you can just say, this is what's going on with me, and be straightforward about it, I think that's the best approach.
Wow, thank you. Such good advice. I know that you and Colin are hard at work on Gatekeeping, your next project, which is an exciting digital program designed to help people with Parkinson's improve the coordination of their walk and stay physically independent for longer. And I've seen a sneak peek, and I really think it's extraordinary. And I promise everybody we'll keep you abreast of their progress. Colin, can they reach out to you if they're interested in knowing more about this program?
Yes, very much so.
Okay, so let me just let everybody know what Colin's email is. It's Colin, C-O-L-I-N, at pdmovementlab.com, and we'll put that in the chat as well. So I just want to thank you both, for joining us. And yeah, of course, did you have something else you wanted to say, Pam?
I want to say one more thing. That's that as a parent, the typical response is to protect your child from anything difficult. And what has happened in working with Colin is that he's gotten to know much more about my PD than I would have told him on my own. And that has made our bond that much more intimate. And I would encourage parents to not be afraid to let their child know how they are feeling. That don't protect them from it. Because I think there's something to be gained from sharing your disease. And so I just wanted to add that.
Beautiful. Wow. Wise words. I understand there's a birthday celebration happening after the show. I'm going to let you guys get started with that. And welcome to the show, our closer, right, as they say on Broadway, Alexis Fishman. She is an international performer. She's joining us tonight from all the way from Australia, where she's visiting family. She has starred in some of Australia's biggest musicals, including Shout and the award-winning Sydney premiere of Kiss of the Spider Woman. She was nominated for a Helpman Award for her performance as young Dusty and Dusty. And she's the creator of 6 solo cabaret shows, including the award-winning Club Stern. I hope I said that right. If you are a New Yorker, you may have seen her at 54 Below, Pangea, the Triad, Laurie Beachman Theater, and our very own Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan. Welcome to Broadway's Best, Alexis.
Thank you, Caroline. So happy to be here.
We both have family that have been impacted by Parkinson's. My Uncle John, who I love so much, and I give a shout out to tonight. And I understand your mother-in-law, Zahava Berger. Did I say it right? Oh, it's such a beautiful name. is living with Parkinson's and sort of an advanced stage of Parkinson's. What impact has knowing her or actually marrying into a family with someone who had kind of an advanced stage Parkinson's diagnosis had on you?
Well, it's hard because you're right. She's at quite an advanced stage and has some pretty significant dementia, and so I sort of am obviously have a close relationship with her, and I know her, but I also rely on the stories that my husband tells of sort of before she lost some of that cognitive function to kind of really feel like I can know who she was, before all that. So, I love hearing my husband speak of her, and then I'm able to kind of, put 2 and 2 together in a way. When I'm with her and I see her, I can sort of remember those parts of her that he recalls and he tells me about, so that, I can sort of have a fuller picture of, of who she is.
And you say something important, Alexis, which is that the energy of a person, their spirit, their essence is there, and to piece it together. And again, to bring it back to what Suzanne was saying, which is we need to communicate, and Gloria and Ratesh too, we need, and Colin and Pam, all of our guests tonight, we can communicate even about the person that is there and build their essence and hold on to them and be inspired by them as well. It sounds like you've been inspired by the stories of your mother-in-law.
Absolutely. And look, the truth is that it's no different to meeting someone at any stage of life, that they've got a whole life that, that they had before you knew them. So it's no different in that way. But yeah, I really, I love hearing my husband speak of her, and then again, being able to sort of put that full picture together. And you're right, her essence and her energy is obviously unchanged.
Beautiful. I cannot wait to hear you perform. I understand your song tonight is from MJ the Musical, which is currently playing at the Neil Simon Theater on Broadway. Tell us why you chose this particular song.
Well, I'm going to be singing I'll Be There For You, which is a well-known Jackson 5 song. And the reason why I chose it is because thankfully, now that we have sort of, emerged hopefully for good from COVID-19, we're able to be with my mother-in-law again in person. She's in a nursing home, and we were sadly having to see her with window visits and all sorts of sort of awful things for far too long. So we're now able to be there in person with her, and we're seeing her as often as we can. And I'm also able to bring a brand new granddaughter who's 5 months old in to see her, who's named for her late husband. So she gets a lot of pleasure out of seeing the baby. So I'm saying I'll be there because we're there for her now in person, which is really lovely.
All right, well, take it away.
You and I must make a pact. We must bring salvation back. Where there is love, I'll be there. I'll reach out my hand to you. I'll have faith in all you do. Just call my name, I'll be there. I'll be there to comfort you. I'll build my world of dreams around you. I'm so glad I found you. I'll be there with a love so strong. I'll be your strength. You know I'll keep holding on. Let me fill your heart with joy and laughter. Togetherness, well, it's all I'm after. Just call my name, I'll be there. I'll be there to protect you with an unselfish love that respects you. Just call my name, I'll be there. I'll be there to comfort you. I'll build my world of dreams around you. You know I'm so glad I found you. I'll be there with a love so strong. I'll be your strength. You know I'll keep holding on. If you should ever find someone new, you know she better be good to you. 'Cause if she doesn't, I'll be there. Don't you know, baby, yeah, yeah, I'll be there. I'll be there, yeah, 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 yeah. Just call my name, I'll be there. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'll be there, baby. You know I'll be there. Yeah, 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 yeah. Just call my name, I'll be there. Just call my name, I'll be
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. What an amazing, amazing evening this has been. Alexis, thank you. And a big, huge thank you to our audience for joining us. I want to invite all our guests to come back for one more moment to wave. And whoever's still here, remember, there is no need to face PD alone. The Northwell Health Edmond J Safra Parkinson's program with the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan is here for you, and it's easily accessible at www.mmjccm.org/Parkinsons. Please also check out the Friedberg JCC, where you can find both of our spring seasons, new programs. And for the JCC, we have a whole week of free sample classes coming up beginning April 11th. So please sign up and join us. And we have an in-person event April 4th. So you have to come and check that out. The link to these classes is in the chat, and our next Broadway Best will be on Monday, May 16th. Special thank you to all our guests, Dr. Ritesh Ranjami, Gloria LeBeau, Colin O'Connor, Pamela Quinn, Suzanne and Pat Vega, Alexis Fishman, and all of you for tuning in tonight. Broadway's Best is supported by a community grant from the Parkinsons Foundation. We are so grateful to that organization. A special thank you to Northwell Health for their support. It's time to say goodbye for now. We look forward to seeing you again. Stay well, and good night, everybody. We'll see you next time. Alexis, have fun down under.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everyone, and thank you.